So this billboard is a picture of al-Najjar. She was a young Palestinian paramedic from the Gaza Strip.
We deserve a better life. We should live under things that we all love, not under occupation, not under siege, not under blockade.
Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to The Struggle. The Struggle is shown on over 30 cable stations from Maine to New York City. Last week we mentioned the devastating UN report that talked about the deliberate killing of Palestinians by Israeli soldiers. Here are some details from Democracy Now! About the awful numbers of killed and wounded.
The report found Israeli forces have killed 183 Palestinians, almost all of them with live ammunition. The dead included 35 children. 23,000 people were injured, including over 6,000 shot by live ammunition.
Think of those numbers. 6,000 people shot with live ammunition, regular bullets. Double that number shot with other things or sickened by tear gas. Israeli soldiers, on the other hand, were under such little threat that all during that period not one of them was killed. A tiny number were injured. They sit on mounds of earth and the snipers shoot at the Palestinians from 2 or 3 football fields away.
Santiago Canton chaired the UN Commission.
The Commission has found reasonable grounds to believe that Israeli security forces committed serious violations of human rights and international humanitarian law. These violations clearly warrant criminal investigation and prosecution, and we call on Israel to conduct meaningful investigations into these serious violations and to provide timely justice and reparations for those killed and injured.
Another member of the UN Independent Commission, Sarah Hussein, described how Israeli forces targeted civilians and journalists in Gaza.
We're saying that they have intentionally shot children, they've intentionally shot people with disabilities, they've intentionally shot journalists, knowing them to be children, people with disabilities and journalists. Some of the children, not all of the children are visibly children perhaps, but many of them are, as Commissioner Murungi just said. The journalists were all marked with press vests that we investigated, and the people with disabilities, as I said, a double amputee in a wheelchair, a person using crutches, they were visibly that, and they're being shot at by snipers who also have spotters available with them, who have very high level technology available to see who's out there in the field.
Intentionally shot children. Isn't that sickening? On the same Democracy Now! Program, scholar and activist Norman Finkelstein gave his evaluation of the report with appropriate passion and sarcasm.
What most struck me about the report was it was remarkably honest. It was very forthright in its conclusions, and it didn't fake this kind of balance which most human rights organizations, even reputable ones, attempt between Israel and the United States. So just to take a couple of examples, it forthrightly stated that Israel targets intentionally children during these demonstrations. It targets reporters, it targets medical personnel, and that's unusual. Allow me just 2 examples which you would be familiar with. So when there was the killings during Operation Protective Edge of the 4 children who were playing hide and seek.
This was back in 2014.
In 2014. Recently, The Intercept had an article on those 4 killings of the 4 kids, and had the story that they weren't really intentionally killed. It was an accident. It was a mistake. And same thing with the New York Times when it had the big story on al-Najjar, which was quoted everywhere. The essence of the story was there was this Israeli sniper's bullet. It hit the ground, ricocheted, and then accidentally hit 3 Israeli medical personnel. It was a magic bullet because there was a huge crowd of people, but this magic bullet only hit 3 medical personnel. But this human rights report by the Human Rights Council, it's very straightforward. It says intentionally targets children, intentionally targets even disabled persons. And that to me was a credit to them, that there was no fake balance. If you look at the proportions, when it looks at the damages done to the people of Gaza, they devote 10 full pages. And then there's a section called Impact on Israel. It's 3 paragraphs. And that's exactly what the reality shows, that overwhelmingly, in fact, virtually entirely, all the infliction of death and destruction is on the Palestinian side. There were, for the period they covered, during the demonstrations, there were no fatalities during the demonstrations, and 4 Israeli soldiers were lightly injured. These are massacres. They're not conflicts, they're not engagements, they're just outright massacres.
News from Palestine, Israel. In the upcoming Israeli parliamentary election, the fascist Kahane-loving party was allowed to run. The Palestinian Balad party was forbidden to be in the election. A bit of good news. A We Stand with Ilhan campaign was successful. An attempt to indirectly condemn her was defeated by a massive outpouring of calls and social media posts. Now to a phone interview I did with Clare Maxwell, an activist from Massachusetts. This week, drivers coming down I-95 in Connecticut have seen a massive highway billboard with the message, "Honoring the first responders of Gaza, saving lives under Israeli fire." It was sponsored by the Palestine Advocacy Project. I'll be speaking with Clare Maxwell from that group. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Great. So tell us more about the billboard. For instance, who is shown in the message? What person?
So this billboard is a picture of Lama al-Najjar. She was a young Palestinian paramedic from the Gaza Strip who was killed by Israeli snipers during protests at the border wall in Gaza, and she was shot and killed while administering first aid to wounded protesters. So we really wanted to show the world the face of someone who's a young, courageous Palestinian woman who very literally gave her life, not just in support of her people, but also gave her life in support of humanitarian ideals, and who used her own talents to support people who are really asking for a different change to the ongoing blockade of Gaza.
And this took place in what they call the Great March of Return, which started, I think, at the end of last March.
Yes, it's been almost a year of Great March of Return protests in Gaza. So far, I think around 20,000 people have been injured, over 200 killed, and among the people who have killed, of course, there are unarmed civilian protesters, as well as medics like Miss al-Najjar, journalists, and about 40 children.
And she wasn't the only first responder killed or injured.
No, over 200 first responders have been injured by Israeli gunfire, and three paramedics, all volunteers, have also been killed.
So we mentioned I-95, but more, what is the location of the billboard? What city?
So it's in Bridgeport, Connecticut, near Exit 25. It's an electronic billboard, and you can see a big red and white smokestack in the background.
You can see the rest of the interview by going to thestruggle.org and clicking on our YouTube section. There's been a number of articles lately defending activists, the message being anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism. Absolutely true. But I prefer this message: you're not anti-racist if you're not anti-Zionist. Comes from a Jewish group, this International Anti-Zionist Network. Upcoming on the 16th of March in New York City and other places around the world, a march against fascism and racism.
For the first time in a very long time, we will see an international mobilization against fascism. Since the election of Trump, we have seen fascists and far-right movements be emboldened not only in the United States, but also in Europe. And, they refer to Trump as well. So I think this new sort of breeding ground for the far-right racist ideas have galvanized the left internationally to try to coordinate an international response. So there will be over 22 countries participating, with actions taking place in over 44 cities.
That was part of an interview I did with Yanis Delatolis. See more of it in the YouTube section on thestruggle.org. Now to art about Syria. In addition to my labors for the Middle East Crisis Committee, I work for Promoting Enduring Peace. On our chief website, pepeace.org, we've been featuring drawings by Marc Nelson about the terrible violence in Syria. This is an interview I did with Nelson. So Promoting Enduring Peace is putting up these drawings, Goya's and yours, as you produce them. And I wonder if we could talk about them in detail. I'm going to try to find the first one. But maybe you could talk about the first one while I'm fooling around here.
Sure. In Goya's first print, he called it Premonitions of War or Premonitions of Things to Come. And I decided that what I would do for my first print, well, I kind of want to mimic the poses of the characters in Goya's print and my print. So what I decided to do was focus on some of the young Syrian boys in Dada, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, but that were arrested, tortured, and just mutilated and murdered because of some perceived because they were expressing their views about not wanting Assad to be president. The government targeted children for spray painting, slogans, or for taking part in some of the early protests. And they literally would target and kill these children. So the first image. Goya's first picture, just a man on his knees, and that's a premonition. Mm-hmm. Yours is a little different. Your first one with someone holding a kid. Yeah, and it was kind of, that's the premonition of things to come, because that's what really sparked some of the really strong protests. Because when you start targeting children, whether it's in Palestine or whether it's in Syria, you start going after kids with government forces. That is an ugly, terrible thing to do. And I think that is kind of the beginning of the real outrage from the Syrian population when they saw the lengths that the Assad government would go to silence people, including children, for speaking their mind, for being part of a democracy, supposedly. So the second one, I think, is Goya's most famous, or at least most familiar to me, with the people shooting. And then there's your variation. Yes. So in Goya's version, it shows a confrontation between civilians and a regular army. And I thought immediately of the confrontation between the protesters in the streets in 2011 being met with literal bullets and even tanks rolling out, and just the atrocities where you have, the total breakdown of a democratic society where you have people exercising the rights of free speech, and then it's met with bullets and violence and shooting. People came with roses, literal roses, and they were met with bullets.
In the third one, in Goya's, it looks like a man with an axe, maybe a civilian or with an axe, and then a soldier on the ground. Yours is different.
Yeah. So one of the things I am switching from Goya's versions is sometimes it shows the civilians beating the troops, and as I'm looking through the images and hearing about the early days of the Syrian revolution in 2011, that's not the picture I get. The picture I've seen and the reports I've seen have these security forces, and I forget the name, how you pronounce them, Shabiba or something. There's these kind of government thugs that usually wearing a black shirt, maybe cargo military pants, that would go around roughing people up, beating them if they engaged in any sort of protest. And that's kind of the image that I selected here, where protesters are being beaten by these government thugs, basically, that kind of sweep in, kind of Assad supporters, but a little bit more organized, and they would target demonstrations.
In the next one, I believe it's about rape. Is that correct?
Yes. Goya has about 4 images about rape, at least. He titles them, "They Don't Want To." He titles them, "Neither Do These Women," and then "These Don't Either." And he really explores the issue of women and children being a huge victim of war, especially through sexual violence, which I thought, in the 19th century, early 19th century, male artist, I was really moved by his honesty about what war is to women and children. So in especially in the prisons of the Assad prisons, there's rape is a weapon of war and torture and fear. So I have several series where it shows that happening to women, and those have been some of the hardest to draw, because I'm really kind of going off Goya's images, and he captured the wrenching away and the grabbing and the assault so graphically that those have been the hardest to do, because you can't help but have emotions while you're drawing them.
And I hope I'm in the right order, but the next one appears to be a battle. Maybe women in Goya's picture, or one is holding a stone, and yours is different. The woman in yours is holding a baby, and there's a stretcher, and so on. And so how did you do that, or what was your point there?
Goya's images were stressing the courage of women in wartime. The courage, in his version, the women are not sitting by as their children are being attacked. They're attacking back. They're striking back with whatever means necessary. Unfortunately, in the Syrian conflict, when you're getting hit with barrel bombs from helicopters and things like that, there is no striking back. There is no picking up a stone and throwing it at a helicopter. So the courage of the women in this conflict have been putting themselves in harm's way to rescue their children, digging through rubble with their bare hands and their hands bleeding, just in a desperate attempt to rescue their children. Women have continuously put themselves in harm's way, because the Syrian, in the airstrikes, they like to do what's called a double tap, where they do a strike and then the white helmet rescue workers show up, and then they'll boom, hit them again. And in all these photos, you always see the mothers are right alongside the rescue workers trying to get their family members out. And to me, that's the epitome of courage and just desperation in a way too.
The last one we'll talk about, it looks like a woman behind a cannon in Goya's picture, and yours is different. I see a helicopter up in the sky.
Exactly. In Goya's image, it was an image of a woman who basically, after the men, a civilian, after the men were killed fighting the French troops, she climbed on top of their bodies and manned the cannon, and was a hero, kind of like who was the woman in the early Revolutionary War who manned the cannon. You know what I mean? Just kind of one of those.
Molly Pitcher, I think.
That's right. That's right. So that was kind of that image. And in my image, again, it's this reality of modern warfare where the mother is reaching desperately up for her kid or a child who's being passed down from above from a ruined building, while a helicopter is dropping barrel bombs and getting closer and closer and closer. And she's putting herself right in the way of that just to get the kid out. And that's what mothers and women and sisters have done. It's the kind of, it's almost like in Tiananmen Square standing in front of a tank, because you're forced with this mechanized warfare that you can't do anything about except put your body in its way and try to get someone out of there.
And speaking of promoting enduring peace, on March 26th, PEP will be holding its Schaefer Lecture. This year it will be given by Frida Berrigan, the renowned anti-nuclear activist. More about this next week. We conclude with the final section of the talk given by Lama Abed at the Palestine Museum US. Abed was educated at UNRWA schools in Gaza.
Even if my mom, she told me before like 2 years, you should believe in yourself now. You are 12 years old and now you are 14. I will stop do that. If you will make something wrong, I'll make it for you right. But you should work in yourself now. I will like look at you from far place. Think that I'm not in your life. You should work in yourself. You should do everything that you are really want. Because someday I'll not be with you. You should do everything you want because you have your own life, you have everything, you have your goals, and if you put your first step in your life, you can continue it easily. And she said, like, I make the important things in the first. You should now continue building yourself. You should continue your life. You should continue doing things that you love. But now she was just like working my two sisters to make it like strong. Other thing that in the wars, I called like my friends to ask them, how do you feel? Are you strong? Are you feeling bad? Do you want? They're just give me one answer. Tomorrow we will not come into the school. We are really sorry. We are now afraid. We will just stay in the home. We will do nothing. Because there's bombing around outside. How we can go walking to the school? How can we go there? Like, because of the things around us in our schools, they're just start, no thank you, we will stay in the home, maybe it's more safety for us. Maybe if I'll die with my family, not alone. So like, I think my mom really should open her school to support and to help the children who has psychological problems. And for me, I have my mom, she will support me, she encouraged me, but other children, they don't have the same mom like me. There's no one to help them, there's no one to encourage them, there's no one to tell them that you are really strong. And even if my mom stopped, like, I have a small and a cute library for me. I'm a bookworm, or maybe a reader, a good reader. I love reading a lot. Because for me, without reading, I will never write. So I read to write. So like I take like some note like in good way, and I have like write good things in it. Like, you can do it. You are the best. Let's fight. You are an amazing girl. You can. You are strong. You are powerful. You are grateful. You are. And just like put it in the wall. Just when I feel like I'm not good, I start to read it. I start just to schedule things. I should do it today. I can do it. Because this way, it helped me. It can like support me. Because I told you, my mom stopped doing that. She told me, you are 14, you can do it, you should continue. Maybe you'll ask how you are somehow good in English. I'll start to say that my mom told me, I'll never let you go to any center in Gaza. You should work in yourself. There is internet, there is like, even if just come for 4 hours, I'll work in those 4 hours to be good in English. Even if we have this situations and the challenges in Gaza, we should continue our life. We should do things that we are want. So 2 years of working on myself, 2 years of talking to myself, 2 years of supporting myself. I'm somehow good in English now. I can't understand people. I can't contact with them. So this is really good step for me. Now, like when I translate some words from Mrs. Donna to my mom or like this, to making like chats, I start to write like, or to put in my mind words that I don't know in English. To just back to internet, to start search for it, to know this word, to know, because I want to be like that. There's a goal in my life. I'll never stop thinking about my dreams. And also like my friends, my sisters, my family. I believe in Gaza's people a lot. I know that they are really intelligent, smart, strong, amazing. I know that they can do their best. I believe in Gaza's people. And I'll never stop doing that because I know that they have dreams, have a lot of things that they want to do. But all what we want is just to better life. We deserve a better life. We should live under things that we all love, not under occupation, not under siege, not under blockade. You know, it was really hard for me for coming here. It takes 6 months just for making phone calls to tell them just let Lama go out. And I think Mrs. Donna say like a lot of things about it. She said it was really hard, and it was really hard for bringing me and my mom out. So open a blockade, it will be a really good thing to do, because if they will open the blockade, we will travel, we will go to college and universities, we will continue our education easily, and continue our life. And this is what we want. We want we want happiness, we want to smile, we kind people, we are kind people. We don't want anything from this life. We just want to be happy. And this is what we deserve. Thank you.
That's our program for today. See you next week at this time. I'm Stanley Heller for The Struggle.